Welcome back, venturers. It's time for another discussion about VNs. I am MR, and together with Tauros, we bring to the monthly Readport our notebooks, or maybe specifically diaries. Tauros, we should probably also welcome back the listeners who skipped the last month of Criminal Border, huh? We're finally free.
But yes, we're finally free of Criminal Border. Aside from that, we've also been up to reading some other visual novels for the past month, and we found some really interesting gems, wouldn't you say, Amar?
Yes, and I'll start us off by first talking about the one I might actually say, I'm sorry, I judged too harshly. So I'll go and talk about Tokyo Necro. On the last report, I have heard a lot of complaints about this title. And here I am saying, you know what? It's actually good. It's actually really good. Now, granted, the one thing I probably complained the most, the artsy-fartsy UI is just, I still don't like it. But I'll forgive them because I really enjoyed the story. I really liked the story. Some of the characters grew on me. And ultimately, I had a great time. So to recap, Tokyo Necro is a title by VNture Plus. It takes place in a somewhat distant future. I would say about 100 years. It's 2199, 27th century. It's a setting in which Ice Age has come around. The world is ravaged also from the environmental changes as well as the World War III that happened, and in a direct result of which biological weapon has been used, most notably of which is the way to utilize dead corpses as zombies, and henceforth the people who manage that are known as necromancers. And now we fast forward to current day in Tokyo Necro. You have city-states. Each city-state tries to live by their own means, and people with power hoard what is the most important resource right now, that being heat. So the pipelines and generating heat in the Ice Age is very important, and that's the setting. Honestly, one part I didn't give enough credit when the first time I talked about it is the technological race. Man, this is a title that shows multiple groups, that being the protagonist group as an agency specialized in killing the dead. Another prominent group is an energy empire corporation, so a high-tech corporate executives. There are robotic industries, as well as the antagonist, the group of necromancers. And each one of those factions tries to outwit, out-tech, out somehow the opponents and rivals. That was amazing to read.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you can imagine, as a protagonist group tends to be the underdogs, right? The scrappy team that they find the means to even the odds. In this case, it's a group of highly skilled and highly trained individuals that develop the martial arts that focuses on efficiency. So, okay, what's the most efficient way to take down something that is undead, or how they like to say it, how to re-kill the dead. And that's funny how they made the whole nomenclature to, how do I say it, reflect the criminal code. Because the criminal code doesn't protect, it protects citizens, but doesn't protect zombies. So they aren't specializing in killing, they're specializing in re-killing something that is already dead. I kind of really like that. I don't want to go too deep of spoilers, but it was such interesting read. For example, the group of protagonists who have mostly relied on skill, but then at some point in the story, you have the mega corporation with their research and development division that, while doesn't have experience in killing the dead, they have a specialized ammo that just melts undeads, because the way they design the ammunition is to dissolve dead tissue. And it completely changes the way the story unfolds from this story forward. Man, there are many twists and turns such as that when something new as a concept is brought to the forefront and explored. One of the things, I don't remember if it was something on the record. I think it was, but one of the things towers I told you that I see as a high potential when it comes to story has also been featured here. So a technology that tries to create holograms that retain mass has also been explored in Tokyo Necro. And it was very interesting seeing the application of that kind of, they call it smart material. That is a very malleable material that behaves like hologram, but also creates mass in addition to being something spontaneous.
Now, as for this Readport episode, though, you mentioned that you did have a lot of complaints or opinions about Tokyo Necro before, but now you mentioned that it's really changed. What? Tell me more about that. What changed your mind?
Okay. I'll start with what changed my mind, because there are some things I didn't change my mind about. So, for example, what I started with is UI. I still feel it's garbage, and they should not do something like that. But I feel like I did not expect the variety and difference I've seen in routes. And I made a joke, poking fun of the Tokyo Necro, seeing how there are 2 choices in the game. I did not expect it will result in 4 different outcomes completely. It's 4 different routes divided by colors. And you know what? I didn't like the protagonist, and this uniquely in Tokyo Necro we have 2 protagonists. You have Soon and Efika. And you keep exploring different perspectives from either the female lead, that being Efika, or Sean, this would be the male lead. And both of them have a different kind of traumatic past that binds them. In the first route that I've read, honestly, in both characters' cases, I was let down. How, I don't want to say unbelievable, but something that I just feel like that was very unexplored, those motivations. Now, coming back to this report, having read everything, you know what? Okay, knowing that what I know, I get it. I dig it. I probably would do some things differently, and maybe I would prefer some conclusions were in a different direction. But you know what? Fine. You convinced me. Those motivations, those deep-rooted traumas that shape their life, I accept. Okay, fine. I understand. You sold me on those, given the other routes. So I definitely changed my mind about the protagonists.
Some stories are like that, where you're in the middle of it, and you start thinking like a critic. You're like, okay, I don't like the direction they're taking this. I don't like how much pacing we're devoted to so-and-so. But sometimes, you reach the end, and then you can look back and like, you know what? I understand why it went like this. You get those little bits of reflection of knowing the full picture. And in your case, like you said, sometimes you still disagree, but at least you have a more informed opinion, right?
Exactly, yeah. And just to slightly, I hope it's not a spoiler, slightly mention that it all revolves about their families and the origin and the troubles they had with their parents. In the first route I've read, it still was lackluster, and honestly, maybe this is me being a sucker for good endings. I really wanted a better resolution than holding a grudge and being stubborn with daddy issues and up until the end. I feel like I would prefer having more VNs when the protagonist's parents are in the story, to have a better role than be the trauma. Because I really am sick and tired of having 2 types of VNs. VNs that don't have parents because they are abroad and they don't exist. And the second is the parents are the antagonists or some sort of deep-rooted issue. Like, can we have something better than just those 2 choices?
It's a rarity to see, a protagonist's parent involved, and they're just a happy, good influence.
Hey, listen that. I'll meet you halfway. Maybe we don't start with happy parents, but we can reconcile by the end, and they live happily ever after. And yes, I am sucker for good endings. Okay, can we avoid endings in which those reconciliation ends with parents' death? Please, can we just fucking?
Sir, you're talking about an actual character, and if we're gonna have a character with that much death, well, that's got heroin childhood romance right there.
Oh my god,
that's a route, baby.
Having read all 4 routes, I was surprised how many characters gained depth. One of the craziest improvement, honestly. I don't know how this character managed to raise in ranks so fast. There is he has an unfortunate shortcut. You know how CEO is chief of company. Mm-hmm. So there is a CEO of Energy Corporation, and she has a very loyal right-hand man in Yamanuma. Okay, that's a Commander Yamanuma, which he has a very sad shortcut, given that he's a special armed division commander, which comes down to sad commander. He's a very sad commander. So, in the first round I've read, he's such a jobber. He's nothing. He's nothing of importance. He gets sidelined super duper hard, and you forget about it. In some of the other rounds, holy fuck, this character is interesting. Holy moly. He is so much interesting. Finally, you have someone who is loyal, who is not necessarily on the protagonist side, but as long as their interests align with the Energy Corp trying to get rid of Necromancer, he will assist. But he's quite I don't know how to say it without sounding weird. Okay, he's kind of cold, commander, calculating, has that male Kudere vibes, okay?
Oh dear.
He's so interesting to read. Okay, see, I have my bias here, okay? Fine. He's so much more interesting than the first round. He was super jobber, and I think he was discarded in 5 minutes time. I was like, okay, who are you? Goodbye. And now, finally, you have someone loyal, someone very interesting with their own motivations, sometimes as a foil to protagonist, sometimes extends a helping hand. Super unique, especially since we talk about the Empire Corporation, which, as I mentioned before, is more of a corporate isolationist. They don't really do dirty their hands. They use other people. But when it comes to their equipment, is top notch. The scavenger ammunition, the one that melts, and that's being probably the premium thing. So seeing him maneuver through the story, it's super intriguing. I was so surprised. Other characters such as how can I say it? Because this is a common recurring pattern when it comes to VNs that have legendary heroes of the past, and some of the older people that had made a lot of achievements in the past, in the previous conflicts, etc., also came to the forefront in those routes, and that was interesting to read. I did not expect that, and I was pleasantly surprised. As well as, I gotta say, shoutouts to Tokitaka. It's the protagonist's best friend character who not only had his own romance, but he has that quirky, crazy persona, because he is so obsessed with numbers. And reading his dialogue and his expressive faces always brought the smile to my face whenever I read it. Especially how they bickered, the entire group amongst themselves. Echika liked to troll him by reading the multiplication table, right? So he refuses to come out from his room, and Echika, you better freaking come out of this room or I'll read the multiplication table. He doesn't cooperate, so she's like, fine. 1 times 7 is 7. 2 times 7 is 13. 3 times 7 is 22. 4 times 7 is 15. And he's just cannot... Oh my god.
Trolling him by intentionally getting them wrong.
Exactly. I was dying laughing. That was such an perfect. The agency and their hijinks was super fun, let's say.
Mm.
And I feel like I alluded to that in a previous episode. That my favorite character, and it still holds true, so I'll be first before you ask me what's the best girl, is the samurai. The Mitsumi. So the solo samurai, very stern character, very calculated, methodological, but she gets trolled so hard and she makes such an expressive, dumbfounded and or anxious emotions on her face. It's just phenomenal. She's the best.
Nice, nice. So overall, you're glad you stuck through Tokyo Necro, explored those final two choices, and realized there was a whole new world still left to this VN?
Hell yeah. And honestly, this is something that is hard to say without spoilers, but the antagonists were phenomenal. They have that aura of philosophical antagonists that make you think about morality, but the story doesn't lend itself for you to, how can I say, justify them. You still believe they are in the wrong, even though some messages that they espouse seem true, like from the philosophical perspective.
Okay.
That's intriguing. I like that. What about you? What have you read the last month that isn't Criminal Border, okay?
Yes, as for what I was getting up to, I was checking out a certain relatively new release, Kugayama Shiori's Death Diary. That's definitely been an interesting one that fell on my radar, both for its style and for its premise, and I thought, oh man, this is something that sounds totally up my alley. So, in this VN, main character happens to stumble across a ghost. She introduces herself as Kugayama Shiori and says she has amnesia. She doesn't remember anything about her life, not how she died, nothing at all, except for her name. And of course, she's still hanging around as a ghost, haunting the living and whatnot. So you and her decide to investigate her past. Along the way, there's nothing really much to it, since you don't have any leads, so they figure that the best way is just trying to get Shiori to jog her memory by reenacting a whole bunch of various means of dying. Several ridiculous suicide or murder outcomes, and hoping that one of these eventually jogs her memory to figure out some clues about her life. I know it's a really morbid premise. One of the interesting things about this VN is that it just kind of carries itself in a pretty casual tone. Some of the description, the description for it kind of leans onto it saying that it's a comedy, but I never thought we got really into black comedy bits. It's more of just, you have a very serious outlook of whole scary ghosts cursing you in the afterlife and, all the topics of mortality. And instead, it just comes across as like some kids trying to do their school project. Along the way, we meet a whole bunch of other interesting ghosts who, in some ways, act very much like normal people, just going about their normal lives. And sometimes you kind of forget that they're supposed to be ghosts and are actually dead. So that's an interesting layer to it. It's partially a murder mystery-ish, kind of, in the sense that you're trying to figure out all of the classic, details behind an investigation and all of that. And I think that leads to one of the VN's more interesting parts, is that there are a ton of choices. There are all the classic choices in VNs that you get of your main character responding to things and deciding what to do in certain situations, but there is also a map. At several points in the story, as the days roll on, you can decide which area to investigate, whether you want to go check out the supermarket, or visit the playground park, or go to a certain intersection for clues. And thus, the order you go in places is very important, because you'll meet certain people there, you'll gather information, you'll take this stuff into other places with other people and follow up on your investigation there. So you get a very interesting amount of gameplay that's still structured very much what you'd expect of a visual novel. So I think that's one of the game's more divisive aspects, because Kugayama Shiori's Death Diary is a VN that has several interesting aspects to it, but in my opinion they could be polarizing, because it depends on how much the reader enjoys these kinds of aspects or how much it, rubs them the wrong way. And one of which would be this gameplay aspect, because there being multiple choices, there are multiple endings. And most of them you would classify as some sort of bad ending, where either a terrible fate befalls you, the main character, or things don't turn out well at all.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand, because you mentioned previously that this is stylized or very close to a murder mystery. And from my understanding, you are cooperating with the person that has been murdered, which is unique. Trying to figure out how they perished by revisiting the possible other deaths. I'm trying to understand how that functions.
She wonders to herself, maybe I died by falling from a high place. So she goes to a certain apartment complex and chucks herself off the roof.
Okay, and then she compares to her previous experience and said, this didn't quite feel like it.
Exactly.
Oh my, that's actually funny, because why I wonder about all of that is to ask how gameplay relates to the feeling of that detectivistic clue gathering murder mystery vibe. Does it improve it, or do you see it doesn't contribute as much? You'd prefer it be more linear instead of the gameplay portions?
This comes down to personal preference, but I really enjoyed the gameplay aspects because they... See, this is part of the polarizing stuff. There's a lot of options, and in saying there's a lot of options, there are several ways you can easily miss something. As in, you didn't go to the right order, or you permanently missed out on content, and this locks you into a bad ending several days later. On the one hand, it's real disappointing whenever your first playthrough, going blind, just results in some kind of bad ending, and you have no clue what happened. You're like, okay, let me go back to the previous choice, and you're like, oh god, that didn't change anything, and there doesn't seem to be any obvious reason of why the story has played out the way it has. To get that on a first, their first blind playthrough, that's pretty demoralizing, I understand that, of course, there's going to be some bad endings, but I feel like along the way, you need to have some that could feasibly feel like an ending. That's like, okay, there's a lot that's still left unsolved, but I guess, things are fine like this.
Oh, so your gripe is more about the conclusions being too extreme of something bad happened instead of you solve it, or at least came to the terms that you cannot solve it. Neutral ending. Because I was going to say the opposite. Wouldn't it be more disappointing if you have a good setup for a murder mystery, that you gather clues and the first ending you easily achieve is the true one, that you solve everything?
Yes, I guess that's the other extreme. You shouldn't be solving everything right from the bat. Well, maybe some people like that.
Exactly, and to build upon that, if that's true, or at least for those people who think this is true, wouldn't it be better to have few go-arounds trying to figure and piece everything together? But I understand in the process of that, you would like to have something less than, and you died.
I suppose. I don't want to start going off too much on hypotheticals and stuff when there's right,
Okay.
the VN right in front of us here. But I get it. There is a delicate balance to how much flow there is to a mystery title that involves choices and bad ends and stuff. And so there's a very good chance that you'll just have to start over from the beginning and go through all the previously read text to notice these choices, to notice the opportunities that you missed out on the first time. And so that also leads to another somewhat weird pacing part, where like the first half of this Death Diary VN, it feels a little flat, character-wise, because it feels like it's a lot more about the world building, about just the whole idea of a main character who's quite attuned to this ghost world and urban legends that are lying under the surface of reality. But then we get into the second half, and that's when a lot of the payoffs start hitting. That's when this VN starts turning more into a character drama, where we get to see so much more depth to the characters that we've met along the way. We start seeing some interesting twists, and we start seeing how the relationships and some of the danger involved, how it affects some of the characters involved. There's still that mystery aspect to it, but I think we do start missing out on some of the horror and supernatural elements to become more focused on the characters. And again, some people might have been drawn to the whole ridiculous paranormal aspect and maybe got a little bummed out that faded over time. What other people like myself would really grow to appreciate how we had so many emotional, hard-hitting scenes in the second half. So all in all, Kugayama Shiori's Death Diary, it's definitely an interesting title. And I don't think it's quite the title that should be approached by someone who has a vision of what they're expecting out of the VN. I think it's a lot more enjoyable for something for you to approach and go along with whatever twists and turns that the story and the tone take. I think that's the more enjoyable way to read this title and to go along with the choices and how the story lays itself out, and to embrace its strengths along the way instead of expecting a certain style out of it.
I mean, I have a question. This is a staple in this podcast. If you were to compare it when it comes to, you chose bad order or bad choices, and then you're locked into bad end later down the line. If you were to compare that in Kugayama's Death Diary to how Fate Stay Night did it with Taiga Dojo having a hint system to guide you to the, not enough love or something silly like that, saying where you messed up. Is it my understanding that this is way more open-ended than the Fate that has more immediate bad ends? And you can't just rearrange.
See, Fate Stay Night is great about it because they have an extensive, Taiga Dojo. That's not just comedy, but they tend to go into depth of what you did to mess up and how to avoid it. In fact, a lot of them, they just explicitly tell you, hey, you remember this part? Yeah, go do something else, you baka. Whereas
Baka, yeah.
Kugayama Shiori's Death Diary, there is a hint screen at the end, but it's only like two sentences. It's part of like that ending splash screen or whatever, and it's incredibly vague. So it's really not much of a hint at all. So you're kind of just left to your own devices to figure it out.
Which, depending on what kind of murder mystery reader and or clue solver you are, it's better or worse. Okay, I see.
Yeah. I enjoyed this VN, going through all of the different choices to really explore all the possibilities. All in all, this VN was about 10 hours long, and that included me skipping over back, to explore all the different possibilities. So there's not too much text you need to get through if you start a new game and try to explore every nook and cranny getting to where you were before. But of course, there are some people who don't really want that kind of experience in a VN. They just want to read it from where they were to get to the end. And I mean, I will admit, it kind of sucks to be starting to getting into that juicy stuff with the characters and some revelations, and it's just over. And now you got to continue this to proceed farther along in the true ending. You got to start back from the beginning and stick your nose into all sorts of different unrelated topics along the way. Nevertheless, I did very much enjoy it.
What kind of reader would you recommend that for, if you would recommend at all?
I know you say this before often, but it's a Tauros-coded VN. But yeah, I mean, as for me, yes, I very much liked it. It's a title that involves lots of choices. It has a very unique premise, and we do get to see plenty of the interesting twist of trying to solve a mystery while having some very unique strengths at our disposal. I also really enjoyed the characters. I know early on they feel more like, lore exposition dumps than characters at the beginning, but they do definitely start to leave an impression, and they start giving you those emotional gut punches. I also really like the tone of how it was very casual. That was a very funny contrast to how morbid you would expect this whole killing and stuff in the ghost afterlife to be. But on the other hand, even though it was casual, it still also knew when to apply the horror stuff and to put on the scares to the reader. So all in all, I would just recommend this to someone who's looking for a fun mix of all sorts of different topics, moods, and emotions along the way. It's a little hard to think of a specific kind of reader who this would be a good recommendation to, but it's also the sort of title that it's a pretty fun recommendation to give as a blind pick, because something along the way, hopefully the recipient will enjoy it.
Okay. That's nice. So the message is finally for those VN moggers that are Tauros maxing, please check out Kugayama's Shiori's Death Diary, because it's very murder mystery core-esque.
Not quite. It's not murder mystery core. That gives you an impression of something like what's it called? Necro sort of thing.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, no, not like that, dude.
Okay. And I brought a different kind of diary, island diary. So this is how can I say it? I have read recently a ton of edgy titles. I need to now defang myself and de-edge. So I picked up something super cozy. So I picked Island Diary. It's about a survivor, a protagonist who wakes up as an amnesiac on an island surrounded by sea. So kind of Robinson Crusoe vibes. You're surviving on an island, and it just so happens conveniently enough that the author decided that you're a harem protagonist, so the first person you're greeted with has animal ears, anime girl. So, yeah, it's that kind of title. Honestly, hilariously enough, while it starts pretty tense, because obviously you scrunch to survive, you don't understand why there are multiple inhabitants in this island, divided their territory and avoid each other instead of working together. You slowly unravel, and in a typical Moege fashion, you solve all other issues by the power of friendship. So the first drama in this title is revolving around mysterious island diary. Oh, they call it notebook, but ultimately it's a diary that someone wrote down their days surviving in an island, and the drama stems from, listen, I didn't want the other people to read it, so I'll read it myself, because it also portrays the final moments of that survivor not making it out and dying, and that would be depression. So, it's like drama for the sake of drama, because the protagonist comes in and says, you know what, she's nice enough to shield you from despair, but she is actually looking forward to you, and now you reconcile, hold hands, and let's work together. That kind of story, okay? And you know what? It's cozy. Like I said, it's cozy. The drama is kind of one of those drama that is solved by just talking to other people and not hiding anything. So literally, protagonist comes in and says, "Yeah, but if you can talk, you resolve everything." And now we can, instead of scrounging and barely surviving each on our own, now we have a form of we form a party of 4, and now we can fish together for food.
I mean, the important thing, like you said, it's a pretty silly premise that revolves into you and a bunch of cute girls who like you.
Yeah, and for one reason or another, all of them have animal ears of different species, so everything is as convenient as it should be. It's my cozy VN of the month, okay? I need to de-edge and defang myself before I pick up another edgy title, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's very silly. I haven't yet finished it. I think I'm at the 3-hour mark, 4-hour mark, something like that. So the major amount of struggles and disagreements they solve with just hold hands and keep talking. What can I say? It's literally power friendship band-aid, and now we're friends forever. Yeah, it's cozy like that, and it's silly in how they play in the tropes for the animals. Those anime girls are referencing with the cat girl being curious with everything new. So, and the other character be having the rabbit ears and is super scared of everything. So she runs away all the time. Okay, it's cutesy. And the last girl, I think it's panda or koala. So she's a slow learner, and that the titular airhead of this title.
Because what's the point of the animal ears if you're not gonna have some fun with the personalities too?
Exactly.
Come on, you need the combination. Let's go.
Yeah, then you can make, the usual tropes like this is a cat tsundere that is very prickly, but then you jungle kiss in front of her, and now she's curious.
There you go.
Yeah, it's still like that.
Yep, just a simple, straightforward, enjoyable title, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
That's my detox from all the drugs and etc. that we've read recently with the Criminal Border. I need something sugary sweet for a change.
But yeah, that's what we've been up to for this past month. There was the Criminal Border stuff, of course, but that won't ever stop us from reading other visual novels as well, and hopefully it doesn't stop you either, listeners.
Yep. And with that being said, thanks to all our listeners, and please tell us in the comments what you've been reading the last month. And with that, venture out.
Venture out.